Hello, everyone. This is Caleb, and today we're going to talk about The Lord of the Rings, The War of the Rohirrim. Now, this upcoming movie has been getting some flack recently for honestly some really dumb reasons. I've seen several different channels trash what is apparently news about this movie. Now, for some clarification here, The War of the Rohirrim takes place about 200 years before the events of The Lord of the Rings, and it follows Helm Hammerhand and his fight with the Easterlings. Now, explaining why these complaints are dumb will probably lead to some spoilers. So if you want to be completely surprised when the movie comes out, you don't want to know a single thing about the story, then honestly, you should probably turn the video off. But don't, because this is a really interesting story here. So the first complaint that I've seen is that the movie will be told from the POV of Helm's daughter, Hera. Now, I've seen several people make the false and dubious claim that Helm never had a daughter. That is false. In Chapter 2 of Appendix A, from where this story is taken, it is very clear he had a daughter. Quote, Freka rode with many men, and he asked the hand of Helm's daughter for his son Wolf. End quote. Clearly, he has a daughter. The change, if you could call it that, is that they're giving her a name. They are going to call her Hera. Now, she didn't have a name before that. So, okay, there's one little huh. But if anything, I'm more annoyed with the choosing of an ancient Greek name. Now, while Hera did make its way up to the Scandinavian territory by the time the Vikings were pillaging, I would have preferred an older Norse name like Freya. For those watching who may not know, the Rohan culture is based strongly on the Norse culture. They're a very horse-like, very roaming group of people, especially that older Rohan. Now, this is where the spoiler is in this case. Beyond the complaint of them giving her a name, the complaint that it's her point of view is just ridiculous. If you make this story, you have to make it from hers because no one else survives. Helm Hammerhand dies. Her brother dies too. In fact, the savior is her cousin from the northern area of the kingdom who rides down to retake Edoras. So she has to be the POV. I think people would complain more about the fact that if you're sitting there watching from the POV of Helm and all of a sudden near the end of the second act, it all goes dark and you move to the POV of someone else. The other complaint I have seen is that, according to the sources that the articles cite, Edoras is destroyed, which of course does not happen in the story. Now let's look into that here. The OneRing.net says, and I quote, Edoras is destroyed at the end of Act 1. We saw some beautiful art of a burned Medusalid, and the rest of the movie is about the wreckage of war. Now, before we go on from here, let's remind everyone just how big of a shill they were for Amazon and the garbage that is the Rings of Power. Now, it's true that Edoras was never destroyed. However, that's not what they say here. They say that they saw an image of a burned Medusalid, which is the Keep of Edoras. It's the Hall of the King. Burning a building doesn't mean that the city was destroyed, nor does it mean that when the movie comes out next year, that's what's going to happen. There are a bunch of storyboards from The Lord of the Rings that never even made it past storyboard phase. Now, the problem that kind of pops up here is the fact that there really shouldn't be anything on fire. Tolkien writes that Rohan loses to the forces of the Dunlendings and their allies led by Wolf in the Battle of the Crossings of Isen. So there was no Battle of Edoras. Now, that's kind of true. So there was a defense of Edoras. Wolf and his allies do storm Edoras, and they do kill the king's son, who is trying to defend the keep. So it is very possible that Medusalid and other buildings around Edoras would have caught on fire, that they would have been torched, destroyed somehow, but unlikely that all of Edoras would have been destroyed. And we know it wouldn't have happened because that's not what happens in the story. But there is a fight in Edoras. So damage to buildings is likely. Now, again, I want them to make this as true to the story as possible. And if they destroy Edoras, I'm going to be annoyed because I don't believe they need to. But you may ask, Caleb, how could you have faith in them? Remember what Amazon did? And you'd be correct. You would be totally right to say that. However, Philip Boyens is one of the executive producers on this project. If that name sounds familiar, it should. She was one of the 3 writers for The Lord of the Rings, a woman who has stated many times her love for Tolkien and his world, and beyond that has proven it with 3 beautiful films. Even more, Miranda Otto, our shield maiden of Rohan, will be narrating this movie. I find it hard to believe that they would remain attached to a project that does a disservice to Tolkien and his story, especially after it's his story that really made them. I would be wary of any reports from the OneRing.net and other people that just completely shilled for Amazon. Anyone that said The Rings of Power is a great show, anyone that said it's racism that's ruining the show, because they're either bought and paid for or have other malicious purposes for this reporting. With that, thank you for staying. Don't forget to like and subscribe, click the bell, and follow us on Twitter at KingsAdvisors_.